Okay, so sellers are losing their shirts right now, as I'm sure you guys all know. It seems to be the talk of the town at the moment. And the reason why is what I'm going to talk about in this video. So first off, I want to start with I have listed a lot less properties this year than I did last year, because last year I lost a lot of money listing properties. So I said this year, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to take on the properties that I know I can sell. And this year it's been very good for me. I think I've only had maybe one expired listing, and that was a listing that I otherwise wouldn't have taken, but I really wanted to help that person out. Unfortunately, that one didn't work out. But I've listed quite a few condos this year, and I think they've all sold. Can't remember, not 100% sure, but pretty positive they've all sold. And what I found right now is, like, if you have a decent condo listing, you're going to get about 2 showings a week. That's what I found. I'm sure it's different based on the area and the product type that you have, but it's about 2 showings, maybe 3 the first week you go on market. And, you know, if you have, like, let's just say a 2-bed, 2-bath, 800 square foot unit in like Willoughby Heights, and it's a 2022 build, you might be directly competing with like maybe 6 or 7 other units that are all around that 800 square feet that are pretty much the same age. Maybe they all have AC, whatever, right? So of those, you know, 2 or 3 buyers or 2 or 3 people going on showings every week, looking at that exact product at that exact price range, only one of them might buy. There might be one buyer per week for the type of property that you have. And they're going to look at all 5 of those units and say, which one is the best one? And most commonly, they're just going to go for the one that's priced the lowest. And if that's not the case, what I've seen a lot this year too is, like, you'll have a comparable sale at $550,000, but everything on the market that's left is like $600K. And I've been on the buyer end of this many, many times. And all we do is we go to the 5 that are on the market and we write an offer on each one until somebody comes down below the price of that $550,000 one that just sold. Because I don't want my buyer to pay more than $550,000. It's a falling market. This unit's directly comparable. Why would we pay more than that one sold for? You know, I'll just wait 3 weeks until one of you guys capitulates and comes down below this sale, right? And what's happening is sellers are listing their properties to be comparable with everybody else, right? They're now in competition. We're in the ballpark, right? We're comparable. And my personal opinion is I think you should be the clear best option, right? If all of your competitors are all roughly the same product and they're $599, you might want to be $589. You might even want to be $585, right? But you want to be the clear, no dispute, no debate, best option in a perfect world. Obviously, not every property is exactly the same. So sometimes it's tough to tell if you're the best option because there's AC and layouts and developers and locations and exposure and all these things that take into account. And some things are important to different buyers. So it is not a perfect science, but that is kind of what you're trying to do. And the reason why is if you miss that one buyer that week and they go and buy that one for $550, well, the next buyer the following week is going to look at $550. And now there's 4 units on the market left that are all at $599. Who's going to come down first? So I'll tell you what I did with my condo. And again, this isn't advice. I don't know anything about your property. This is not intended to breach any existing agency agreements. Go talk to your realtor. Get advice from the person you've hired to do the job. But when I sold my condo, it was a 1981 condo, and I sold it last year. Mark was a bit better, but it's still sliding. And when I ran the comps and I looked at the actives on the market, I said, you know, it's probably worth $375 to $385, right? Back then it was a little bit easier to gauge the value. So I was like, okay, my goal for this is to sell it. That's the main goal, right? That's it. I just want to make sure it's sold because I used a HELOC to buy my house. I had to pay back the HELOC. So it didn't matter to me whether I got $385 or $375 or even $365. The goal for me was sell it, get the money, pay off the HELOC, right? So I ran those comps, $375 to $385. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to let it go I'm going to give whoever buys it a deal just so they buy it, right? Like $365, I just want it gone in like a week or 2 if I can, right? So I was like, I'm going to list it on Monday. And I called up a couple of my realtor buddies and I was like, hey, if you got a client, I have a 2-bed going live on Monday. I think it's worth this, but I'll let it go for this. And if they want to come do a private showing before it goes live on Monday, let me know. Well, out of a bunch of realtors I called, somebody had a client. They came, they did a private showing. There was some urgency there because obviously they didn't want it to go live on the market and then somebody else come and scoop up the deal. So they just bought it before it went on the market at $365. And to them, they're like, well, I'm getting a 20 grand deal. if I base it on the top end of that market range. Now, I could have listed it and got 385, right? I could have listed at 389 and got 385, but I could have also listed at 389. Nothing happened. A new comparable populates at 375. Now I got to go 379, or I got to list at 375. Maybe I get negotiated down to 360. Like, the market is falling, right? And the longer you're on the market, the longer you risk some other comparable property in your area capitulating and selling at a price that you didn't think was actually going to happen. This just happened to another buddy of mine, right? He has a townhome. When I first spoke to him, he thought it might have been worth like 855, right? And we were talking about possibly like maybe you should go like 855. I was like, well, maybe you should go 839, just get in front of it. He's like, yeah, I don't have a lot of money to work with, so I'm going to try to get the higher price. Well, now somebody has listed in that complex comparable unit at $799. They sold at $780, a price that was completely unimaginable when he first went live on the market, right? So that's kind of the risk you're taking right now in this market. And I believe the reason why sellers are losing their shirts is because they're getting the goal confused. Why are you selling this property, right? You're selling it because you want to buy something else. You're selling it because you can't afford to pay the mortgage. You're selling it because you're losing money every month. You're selling it because you don't want the headache. You're blah, 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 blah. That's the reason why people list it, right? And usually that $10,000 really isn't going to make a difference on the amount of money that you have left over when the sale is done. Sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't, right? And what they're doing is they're taking the main priority up here, which is sell it, and they're switching it now. It's, yeah, I want to sell it, but I want to sell it for X price, right? And now that this sell it at X price is in first position, you're jeopardizing the actual goal of completing the sale and getting it sold. So I would say that if I were to list something right now and my main goal was get it sold, that's why I'm listing it. I would want to be the best option on the market, right? It can be a little bit debatable, but it can't be highly debatable. It can't be like, hopefully they pick us out of these 5, right? It has to be like, well, why wouldn't they pick us out of these 5? And a lot of the time, especially in the condo market, that's going to come down to the price you're listing it at. And my mindset was, I don't care if I leave 10 grand on the table. I don't care if I leave 15 grand on the table, because my goal is making sure that it's sold. The prices are probably going there anyways, right? If you don't sell it now and you sell in a month, that was the price you were going to get. The reality of the situation is all you did was beat your competition. You won. You won. You beat the competition. And now everybody else who didn't want to do what you did, who's on the market, is going to have to deal with that comparable sale. And if somebody else beats you to being that comparable sale, now you are going to have to deal with that comparable sale. So, something to think about. And if you'd like to chat with me about doing that, there's a link down in the description that goes right into my calendar. Otherwise, I just appreciate you for watching my content. I'm that Agent Kelly. I'm making moves to move you. Peace.